Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, we'll hear from the Federal Jobs Minister on support for workforce development in our province. But first, from cooperation concerns over data leak investigations to the impact of a pipeline deal on the separatism cause, let's kick off the program with tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, Laurie Williams, political scientist at Mount Royal University, and Ray Martin is a former MLA and former leader of the Alberta NDP. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with the ever-growing workload facing Elections Alberta ahead of the October referendum.
The volume of work is unprecedented. I used to drink from a garden hose. Now I'm drinking from a fire hose.
And front and center at the moment, David Parker, leader of the Centurion Project, a separatist group accused of accessing and sharing the electors list. Elections Alberta says Parker is not cooperating with investigations, refusing to sign a statutory declaration confirming he will comply with a direction to cease and desist. Laurie, let's start on the David Parker element. While Elections Alberta says it will be pursuing all legal avenues, how much of a stumbling block could this be in its ability to investigate the data breach?
Well, it could be a barrier in this one particular instance. And I think the biggest concern here is that he's refusing to comply with the cease and desist order. In other words, the cap that they want to put on the spread of this information, this private list, or this list of private information about almost 3 million Albertans, their ability to contain that has been materially affected by David Parker's actions here. Now, we'll see here, there have been changes to the legislation that Elections Alberta says have hindered their ability to investigate. This has been an ongoing issue for more than a month. They still haven't contained it completely, and they're now meeting resistance from David Parker. So it does raise questions about their ability to investigate, their ability to control it. Certainly legislative changes will be required. And this is why I, along with several others, are calling for a public inquiry to actually find what the problems are and to shore up the legislation to deal with this more effectively. When you've got someone who's calling Elections Alberta at the very time that he's released this private information on over 3 million, almost 3 million Albertans, he's saying that the agency that is charged with protecting that information is the problem. He calls them corrupt to the core, a den of evil, a tool to suppress democracy. And this is actually hurting the separatist cause. It's causing divisions between and amongst separatist leaders, and I think is creating a lot of concern and distrust amongst Albertans who might have been sympathetic towards separatism if they think that the leaders of the cause are unwilling to comply with the law, who think the rule of law does not apply to them, and see the institutions that are meant to protect our privacy are being disrespected in this way.
Ray, how do you see this playing politically, or does it fall off the radar where the legislature is concerned, with the spring sitting just a day away from coming to a close?
Yeah, it's unbelievable that a guy like David Parker, I mean, it's extreme right. And I was just looking at the organizations that are like Parker. Look at all the organizations: Republican Party of Alberta, Take Back Alberta, Alberta Prosperity, Stay Free Alberta, Centurion Project, David Parker. So it's just an extreme right excuse to be arrogant and not follow the rules the way they should. It's just unbelievable that somebody could do this and get away with it. Hopefully that they're going to move on them and and tell them to stop. They've told them once, but they have to be a little more harsh with them and say enough is enough. If you're not doing the right thing, then maybe jail's the answer. I wouldn't care if they did that for them.
Laurie, we heard the Chief Electoral Officer's comments a moment ago about drinking out of a fire hose. Just how overloaded an agency is this to be in the weeks and months ahead?
So we've already heard that they've asked for additional money to deal with the recall campaigns and these referendum questions. So they've had to count the signatures and verify them for Thomas Lukaszik's petition, the Forever Canadian petition. They are looking at the possibility of counting and verifying the signatures on this petition, and the scrutiny is going to be very high because of this voters list and fake names on the voters list, the possibility that it was used to add names of people to the list without their knowledge. That's a real concern. Some might recall that when memberships were handed out to folks in the UCP leadership campaign, Cam Davies was associated with putting names on the list from people who didn't know that they were on the list. So with all of those questions out there, there's a very high threshold to meet to try to restore some degree of confidence in the process. And I'm not sure that can be done in the time that we've got here, particularly if it's just Elections Alberta within its restrictions, the Privacy Commissioner within their restrictions, and the RCMP with their burdens as well, whether this can all be done in a timely manner, that is before October 19th. Add to this the possibility that Corb Lund's petition might reach its threshold and add to the number of petitions and signatures that need to be investigated and verified. And you can see that it presents significant challenges to Elections Alberta, and they have been under-resourced both in terms of funds, but also in terms of authority because of the changes in the legislation that happened last summer.
All right. Now, along with all the focus on separation, there is also now plenty of buzz building around finalization of the pipeline MOU as the final piece of the puzzle in the memorandum of agreement on a new West Coast pipeline signed by the Alberta and federal governments last November. An announcement now expected Friday that the two sides have hashed out a deal on industrial carbon pricing. Ray, if this does come to pass in a couple of days' time, to what degree could this derail momentum around the separatism cause?
Well, you know, the first thing is you have to get our people on board if you want to make that. The BC Premier's not happy. A lot of Indigenous people in British Columbia are not happy. And so you're going to have to deal with that because you can't just build a pipeline and go across, say, the Indigenous tribal areas and go into Vancouver if they don't want you there. So it's not a foregone conclusion that people seem to think it is. I think there has to be a fair amount of negotiation before anything happens.
Laurie, how do you see Premier Smith maybe making use of this latest development above and beyond getting a new pipeline? Does it become a tool of sorts to make more of a stand against the separatism movement?
It looks like that's exactly what it's doing for Danielle Smith. She has for a long time been talking about a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. She's added the word independent now. It's a sovereign and independent Alberta within a united Canada. This seems to have given her more confidence to stand with Canada, to take a stand that she thinks that Alberta is in a more advantaged position as part of Canada than outside of Canada. You put together that and the bungling that's happening on the separatist side, and I think it's made things a bit different. But it's important to understand that separatist leaders are calling on their supporters to join the UCP in order to put more pressure on Danielle Smith. They're essentially threatening a leadership review or a split in the party, which is what Danielle Smith has been clearly trying to work around up until this point. It's important to remember that Mark Carney got a standing ovation in Calgary amongst business leaders when the MOU was signed, and days later, Danielle Smith got booed at the UCP annual general meeting, and that at that same meeting, a separatist leader got a standing ovation. So there's still a contingent of well-organized individuals who have the capacity to really mobilize and focus their people and their resources to try to push things to make things more difficult for Danielle Smith. And then we still have, as Ray has suggested, the need to get cooperation from other partners, particularly investors. And the separatist question is leading some investors not only to be reluctant to add add funds to Alberta, but actually pull some out. So there are barriers to overcome still, but this is looking like a very good step in the right direction.
All right. We'll put the panel on pause for a moment. And on the other side of the break, Federal Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu joins us on partnering with Alberta on tariff impact support. We'll dig into that when we come back.
Our age of anxiety is caused by trying to do today's job with yesterday's tools and yesterday's concepts.
The Prime Minister addressing a gathering of lawmakers from around the world, outlining government policies with the review of Canada's trade deal with the U.S. and Mexico on the way. Policies that extend to partnering with Alberta on support for tariff-impacted workers. And joining us now, Patty Hajdu, Federal Minister of Jobs and Families. Minister Hajdu, great to meet you. Welcome to Alberta Primetime.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, so in partnering with the Alberta government to head off the impact of tariffs, what level of support does that pave the way to for our province?
Yeah, so what we're doing is, really working closely with provinces and territories to make sure that if a worker is impacted by tariffs, and it doesn't even have to be directly by tariffs, if their job is threatened in any way, that we are able to very quickly support the provinces in ensuring they can receive adjustment supports, training supports, opportunities for new work in the province. And this is something that Alberta does very well already. We transfer about $250 million every year to Alberta. So Alberta will receive another $68.5 million to make sure they have the resources so that no matter when or how a worker is impacted, they're going to get those immediate and urgent supports to readjust.
The April jobless rate for Alberta registered at 7%, up half a point from the month previous. Where does Alberta rank among the provinces needing the most assistance because of the current trade environment?
I would say it's a different impact across the country and different regional impacts as well. That is, as you know, slightly higher than the national unemployment rate, but we have been seeing the unemployment rate tick up as a result of the tariffs and impacts, in particular in hard-hit industries like aluminum, steel, auto manufacturing, softwood lumber, and more. And the reality is this has a trickle-on effect with individuals that are, employed in some of the supply chains that help ensure that those businesses and those sectors have what they need to perform and to thrive. And so this additional money is there no matter how your job has been impacted. As I said, it's very important to realize that there are those supports out there for workers, and provinces can mobilize very quickly with federal support to ensure people have the handoff they need when they're impacted.
In terms of that mobilization and in moving this forward, how much of a handoff is there here with the province? What are the expectations of Alberta government involvement?
Well, the labor market development agreements, which is what this is building on, actually are very well monitored across the country. And we have the ability to really assess how many workers are reached. So, for example, every single year through the standard $254 million transfer, it's about 66,000 workers that get additional supports. This can be supports to find a new job, supports to address training gaps, supports for employers to bring on workers. There's all kinds of different creative ways that this work is done. And each province, it looks a little bit different. They often work with community level organizations. The additional $68.5 million will mean another almost 7,900 workers will be supported in the same ways. And it's really, again, to make sure the province has the capacity to address anybody who's feeling that labor instability, job loss, or even in some cases hours cut, and the ability to actually pivot quickly to new opportunities.
And how much of this might be about bolstering the trades?
Well, so it does build on our announcement in the spring economic update, and I'm glad you raised that, which is a $6 billion investment in attracting people to the skilled trades. And Alberta, as you know, is in some ways very much poised for growth and a variety of different major projects, a variety of different infrastructure projects across the province. And the challenge that we are all facing as Canadians is we just don't have enough skilled trades workers graduating with their red seals as electricians, as plumbers, as technicians, to be able to build all of the projects, to be able to get things off the ground as quickly as we want to. And that is why last week or 2 weeks ago in the spring economic update, the government has made this ambitious investment of $6 billion to attract people to the trades. We'll be working with provinces like Alberta on that attraction piece to make sure that apprentices can get through that training. Only about 32% of Red Seal apprentices actually finish their course of study, and to be able to support employers with a $10,000 subsidy to hire those apprentices in their first year to make sure they get those hours they need to certify. So this is an all hands on deck moment. It actually builds on the investments that we're talking about today for Alberta.
To what degree could this maybe shift to support in driving forward a new pipeline to the West Coast, if it is that a deal can be reached resulting from the Alberta-Ottawa MOU that was signed last November?
It's a great example of a project where you'll need a lot of skilled trades workers and a lot of technicians that keep that machinery going. It's an entire, area where you really rely on building trades workers, on plumbers, on steam fitters, pipe fitters, and all of these red seal trades, as I said, we are facing a shortage. The provinces and territories, along with the federal government, have been working on removing barriers to labor stability, and we are making progress, and we can see that those barriers are coming down, meaning that people can move from province to province more easily, and we hope even more easily as we continue this work. But the challenge is that not everybody can move, and we are going to have multiple projects getting lifted off the ground at the same time. In fact, some already are, as you know, in progress. And so that is why we are really focusing in on the skilled trades and these labor market adjustments to make sure people have the training they need when they want to pivot to this profitable work.
On the political front, it's hard to ignore, but a lot of focus in our province right now on the prospect of a referendum on separation. How do you see a program like this maybe playing into the conversation? What might it say about your government's response to that evolving dynamic?
Well, listen, I think right now what I'm seeing across the country is that people are pulling together to protect Canada. People are pulling together to protect businesses. So much fervor around shop Canadian, buy Canadian, support Canadian industries and services. And so, we're just focused on making sure that every province, including Alberta, feels like they are a valuable part of this grand project and that they are immobilized to be able to take opportunities as these new opportunities evolve. And so, look, the Prime Minister and Premier Smith are speaking frequently and positively, and it is my hope, my fervent hope, that we continue this national project of supporting each other and making sure that this proud country, Canada, continues to stand firmly independent and strong.
All right. Well, we'll have to leave it there. Appreciate your time this evening, Minister Hajdu. Thank you kindly.
Thank you so much.
That's Patty Hajdu, the Federal Minister of Jobs and Families. Welcome back. We heard from Federal Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu before the break on partnering with the Alberta government on the investment of nearly $70 million over the next 3 years on workforce skills development and connecting Albertans with in-demand jobs. Laurie, is there something to be said for timing of this announcement with anticipation now of the pipeline MOU deal being finalized Friday?
I'm not sure it was planned this way. I think it is important to recognize, and the federal government's going to need to do its work to convey all of the things that have happened with this government in terms of trying to help provinces and individuals within Canada deal with the impact of this volatile international environment between Donald Trump's tariffs and threats around the CUSMA agreement, now oil prices surging, difficulties in meeting the demands that exist internationally. These are all very important moves that require the cooperation and collaboration, not just between provinces and the federal government, but among provinces as well. There are going to be challenges, as we've seen here. This money that's going into trying to to train people in the skilled trades, those results won't be seen immediately. And so that messaging about what is being done at a time when people may not be feeling like things are improving will be an important part of the messaging, and perhaps a source of hope for people that are struggling in the current climate.
Ray, what do you make of the level of Alberta-Ottawa engagement here? Expanding an initiative like this to further strengthen the workforce at a time when there's not only the impact of tariffs, but there's all the separation turmoil playing out in the background.
Yeah, I think we have to look at what we can do. Everything's going to take time. But I think the key to me is getting more skilled young workers out in the job market. And that has implications, obviously, for institutions like NAIT and SAIT and their educational establishments. But I think we're going to have to move and bring more of those in fast, because we clearly need more young workers coming in, or we're not going to go very far. So I think we have to set up more people, more institutions like NAIT or SAIT. They may specialize or whatever, but we've got to get more young people in the labor market, or we're going to face trouble. We see as you pointed out, the interest rates or the unemployment rates going up from 6.5 to 7. That will continue if we don't do some other things. So we really have to put a lot of money into creating jobs in the skilled markets, like plumbers and pipe fitters and that sort of thing. We better do this fast, because it's going to get worse if we don't move quickly.
Laurie, if we could come back to that, the pipeline element, what do you feel Friday could mean for the Smith-Carney, Alberta-Ottawa relationship?
Well, I think this, in combination with the other initiatives taken by the federal government, will send the signal that Mark Carney keeps talking about: cooperative federalism, how federalism actually benefits Canadians, and including Albertans, how Albertans are better off within Confederation because of some of these possibilities than they would be otherwise. It can be a little bit complicated for people to digest, but if people start to see, for example, somebody who wants to go into the trades getting the money they need to finance them through the time they need to take in education, if they're getting the money they need so that they can actually make that longer term investment, that can make a huge difference. And one of the themes that Danielle Smith has been focusing on is youth unemployment in the province. It was a central issue in the consultations that she did amongst Albertans. I think this is a major concern, particularly youth unemployment, and this does address that quite directly. So I think there is, again, potential for this to work out in the longer term. The question remains whether Albertans and other Canadians are going to lose patience as things continue to be challenging, and these policies aren't yet yielding results.
All right, folks, we're out of time. Have to leave it there. Great to see you both. Thank you for this.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Now, here are a few responses to a recent story posted by CTV News, and it's about Centurion Project leader David Parker not cooperating with Elections Alberta investigations into the leaked voter list. Tekla says laws don't apply to him. Did they sell the data, forge some signatures? Alberta wants to know. Crazy Me wonders, how could they possibly have a referendum vote until all this is dealt with? Big Rob believes there's no reason our society has to be this tolerant. Adele asks, isn't that why we have the RCMP? And GTA Hacker Hunter says, I believe the Centurion Project is an interference group. They know what they're doing is harming separatist intentions. This behavior is being commissioned. Have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. Coming up tomorrow, with anticipation of an industrial carbon price deal, we'll find out what finalization of the pipeline MOU could mean for investor confidence and the economic outlook for our province. That's on Thursday. Until then, have a great evening, everyone, from all of us at Alberta Primetime. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time.